Hey everyone, it's your buddy Karnak here of Star Wars Armada Explained. We're going to dive into another objective here. We're going to be looking at dangerous territory. It seems like it's a very straightforward objective, but actually there's quite a few interesting interactions and caveats associated with this objective. This video is probably going to take me a little bit longer than some of my other ones. But let's dive right in. Dangerous territory setup. Obstacles must be placed in the setup area beyond distance 5 of both players' edges. After placing obstacles, place one objective token on each obstacle. So let's start with the setup. So setup says the obstacles must be placed beyond distance 5 from both players' edges, which up top here we've got the Rebel player as player 1, Empire as player 2. I've got the SSD out just because, like, why not? I mean, this seems like this is really good for the example I'm going to be using. For the example I want to use. So the second line from each player's edge, that's distance 5. So you have to place all these objective tokens essentially in the middle of the play area. So let's start with that. As second player, you know what? Let's put the station there. And then first player, and then second player. And you still need to adhere to the, obstacles not being within distance 1 of each other during their placement, just because it doesn't say it on the card. Not all the cards say that. That's still the standard rule. You need to be making sure they're keeping them beyond distance 1 of each other, which distance 1 is this black circle. So nothing can be in that black circle. That's another objective. Then let's just go ahead and throw out some more objectives. Perfect. Now it says, after placing in obstacles, place one objective token on each obstacle. Now, here's some debate. Who places the objective tokens on each obstacle, and why does that matter? Let's before I read the errata for this, I'm going to make a personal ruling, a personal judgment, and this is not supported in any FAQ. It's not supported by any official ruling. But if I had to make a ruling, who places them? Let's look at the fact that the second player, if you are the second player, you are supposed to provide everything that is required to play the objective that you are providing. In this case, you need to provide all the objective tokens, and you need to provide all the objective obstacles, or the obstacles as second player, and you need to provide all the objective tokens. By that reasoning, I would say it is the second player's responsibility to place all the objective tokens on the obstacles and not the first player. You may have a different system. Your TO may disagree. You may decide that you want to alternate placing them. Why is that important? And before I place those down, let's read the clarification. It states, a squadron with strategic can move objective tokens off or onto obstacles. An obstacle token can only be removed to gain one victory token if it is overlapping an obstacle. If multiple objective tokens are overlapping an obstacle, only one can be removed when a ship overlaps that obstacle. This card's special rule effect resolves during the move ship step while executing a maneuver. Why is that a big deal? You would think, oh, just take the token, put it in the middle of the obstacle, right? Wrong. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say put the token in the middle of the obstacle. It says put it on the obstacle. So a second player, or if you've got the ability to move tokens around, if you have strategic, obviously the placement of these tokens is going to be very important, because remember, strategic from the Lambda or from the VCX, if they move at distance 1 of the token, they can pick that token up and move it at distance 1 anywhere else. So obviously, if that token is here compared to here on the obstacle, you are drastically potentially changing the outcome of that vessel getting to that token and potentially moving it around. So it is important to know how you want to place those tokens on the obstacle. And again, you could even, if you wanted to, technically have it off the obstacle. It doesn't say it has to be within the obstacle. It just says on each one. That is technically on the obstacle. That's not rules lawyering or being difficult. I mean, that's what the objective says, and we don't have any other clarification that says that you can't do that. And by the definition of the objective, you can do that. So again, just making sure I'm pointing things out that some people, don't think about, may not realize. But again, I would say it's up to the second player to determine where those tokens ultimately are on each obstacle. But then that token, unless it's moved by strategic or by some other card or ability that may come out, they have to remain in that position on the obstacle in case it's moved. What do you mean if it's moved? Well, we have to take into account that there's graph shift reroute, which states if an obstacle has an objective token placed on it during the setup of dangerous territory, it is moved with this effect, that objective token remains on that obstacle. So if you put that objective token on that obstacle and then graph shift reroute comes along and moves that obstacle, you need to make sure it's staying in the same position that it was placed in. Okay, you don't replace it. It stays exactly where it is. Even if you rotate the station, like you've got to rotate the objective token with the station. This may sound like you're getting nitpicky, but like that's what the rule says. Again, you have to, if it's moved, the objective token remains there. So it has to remain exactly how it was placed. So something to think about with graph shift reroute. Always messing things up. Always thwarting my plans. But anyway, in this situation, we're not going to care too much about where the tokens go. We're just going to go ahead and throw them on the obstacles, just to move along with the objective card. But again, making sure I'm pointing these things out. We'll continue on with some further explanations and some crazy things that can happen with this objective. Let's get into the special rule. When a ship overlaps an obstacle, that ship's owner may remove, note that says may, you don't have to take it off and claim a victory token if you don't want to. I don't know why you wouldn't, but you don't have to. When a ship overlaps an obstacle, that ship's owner may remove the objective token on that obstacle to gain 1 victory token. In this case, the victory tokens are worth 15 points each. So you have an opportunity to score, 15 times 6, however many points it is. I don't do math. When one of the second player's ships overlaps an asteroid field or debris field, that obstacle has no effect. So this is the benefit of the second player, is the fact that essentially the obstacles don't hurt the second player at all. Note that it doesn't mean, or doesn't mention the station, meaning the station still has its normal effect for the second player. Now the first player, if he runs over an asteroid field or debris field, he's still suffering the effects and consequences of doing so. So one great ship for this objective is Jaina's Light, which is a CR-90 Corvette. That title, if you overlap any obstacle, it has you may suffer the effects of that obstacle. So Jaina's Light pretty much can ignore the effects of the bad obstacles if it wants to. So this objective is great if you're playing against this objective. But moving on. So let's give an example of how does that work. So when you overlap, remember, overlapping is any part of the ship, including the shield dials. So even if you're to do something, like that, and you're just barely touching the station, still considered an overlap, and you can claim the objective token. When you claim the objective token, it is removed from the board completely. It's not placed on a ship or anything like that. You just essentially place it in a pile off to the side at the end of the game. You can tally it then, or you can trade the objective token in immediately for the victory token, whatever your preference is. I mention that because like there's Jen Urso out there. She does not do anything with this objective at all. All right, let's back it up. What happens in this situation, like with the SSD? What happens if you overlap both obstacles at the same time in a maneuver? What happens then? Well, it just says when a ship's owner when a ship overlaps an obstacle. It doesn't specify 1 obstacle, 2 obstacles, 3 obstacles. It just says an obstacle. The ship's owner may remove the objective token on that obstacle to gain 1 victory token. Because remember, when you're done executing a maneuver, which again that's specified in dangerous territory, the card's special rule effect resolves during the move ship step while executing maneuver. So what it means by that, as soon as that ship is done moving, if you have multiple actions or multiple overlaps, you can only resolve them one at a time. So you choose the order of that overlap. Well, first I'm overlapping the station, which is an obstacle. So I am going to may choose to remove that objective token. Then you move on to the next order sequence. Oh, I overlapped the debris field. Now I may remove that token to claim it. The only time that you are limited in the number of tokens you can claim is, for example, if somehow both of these tokens have ended up on the same obstacle. If there's two objective tokens, and if Vassal would catch up, please, I don't know why it's chugging. Come on. If both of these obstacles, it's still taking its sweet time. Any time now, Vassal. There we go. I don't know why it took so long, but if both of these objective tokens were on the same obstacle, you can only claim one, not both. But again, if they're each on their own obstacle and you overlap both, you can claim each one on each obstacle. Okay, there's no limit to that. Just only if they're on the same one, which again, that can only be accomplished if it's moved by strategic. In strategic, it did mention, again, that you can move tokens on and off an obstacle. So if, for example, a strategic had come up and had moved this objective token off of that station before the SSD had overlapped it, again, what does the objective say? You can only claim it if it is overlapping an obstacle, the objective token. So if you moved it off, you can only then claim the token that's on that obstacle. Now, it's interesting is that once the objective token, again, you can double up on objective tokens. You can somehow, you could probably manage to fit them all in one obstacle if you want. There's no limit. So even, for example, if this one had been moved off and you claim this one, you could move that onto that obstacle later, and then if you overlap that obstacle again, you could claim it off that obstacle. Essentially, the objective tokens don't care where they ultimately are, as long as they are on an obstacle and they can be claimed on an obstacle. Now, it should be noted that if you have a card like Engine Text, for example, which allows you to initiate a second maneuver, if there was two objective tokens on one obstacle, let's go ahead and put the interdictor here. Let's say he did his first movement, grabs the first token. Let's say he executed a navigation command, either a dial or token, or dial and token together. So that was his first movement, and then he does a second movement. He can then claim the second token, because again, each one is a separate maneuver. You're executing two different maneuvers, and all this cares about, as mentioned, is that it resolves during the move ship step while executing a maneuver. Okay, let's get into something a little deeper. What happens if, for example, this interdictor was on, let's see here. What happens if this interdictor is on one whole point left? And we'll say that this Nebulon is sitting here. He was trying to get to this token on this debris field, but you know what? He didn't quite make it. So let's say that the interdictor, maybe he wants to ram, or maybe he doesn't have, for whatever reason, he's going to ram the Nebulon. So what happens when he rams? He's only got one whole point left. How does this all resolve? So let's talk about that. So he goes speed 2, he rams into the Nebulon. You do take the face down damage card at that point, or not at this point, but it's you suffer that damage after the maneuver is executed. Okay? So let's back up. You need to complete the maneuver first before the damage is placed, because you still have to determine where the final maneuvering point for that ship is. Even though that ship has suffered that damage, we know it's at essentially there's no more health for it. It needs to continue executing the maneuver and finish it. So it drops back to the next available position, which is here, which is still overlapping the objective. Remember, you get to resolve the order of things that happen in the executing maneuver step. So even though he draws that damage card and is immediately destroyed, or essentially will be immediately destroyed, you're still not done executing the maneuver. because now you need to suffer the effects of the debris field, which is 2 damage. So you would then draw, you essentially you do go into -2. So you would draw the 2 damage cards for that. But guess what? That's still the same timing as overlapping, executing the maneuver. You can claim that objective token as your ship is exploding all around you. Cue the pirates, the guy walking down the railing, his ship is exploding around him. You can claim the token for a victory point then as your as your ship then explodes and then it no longer exists. So that is something that you can. I mean, I don't know why you would do that, but I mean that's something that can happen. I'm sure it has come up because again, you still have to go through all the steps to complete it. Because even if the ship is destroyed, you still have to place all the overlaps. If you overlapped any squadrons, they still have to go around the ship after it's executed and completed its maneuver. Before you remove it, you have to place all the overlap squadrons down. Because again, you have to still complete all of the steps. So that is dangerous territory. I think I've covered all the crazy caveats with it. Again, strategic can move those tokens on or off the obstacles. If it's off the obstacle, you can't claim it. You can't get a point from it. Meaning that if an enemy did bring it, he could fly around and pull all the tokens off of them, and nobody can get points for him. Remember, an objective token can only be removed to gain 1 victory token if it is overlapping an obstacle. If there are multiple tokens on an obstacle, only 1 can be removed with 1 overlap at a time. Remember, engine techs can do the 2 movements. Technically, you can claim it twice. And again, the card's special rule effect resolves during the move ship step while executing a maneuver. So, before the ship has finally entered into its resting place, before you sit down, or any squadrons you may have overlap, you can accomplish all that. That's still the same timing for that. Okay. I think we've covered it, guys. As always, if you think something's wrong, or if I got something wrong, make sure to point it out. Let me know about it. I do appreciate you guys watching the videos. I always respond to my comments, always respond to questions. If I do get anything wrong, I always make sure that if I need to reshoot the video, I reshoot the video, all of that. So you guys are great, and as always, I'll catch you next time.